that he is being motivated by. And it's really, quite interesting. This whole thing, I sort of develop in other chapters, is that one of the things that Will Smith's films quite often do is to engage in a kind of racial reversal, where he plays the equivalent of a white character who is racist. And for instance, in the film Bright.
Right, I was going to mention that, yeah.
Where you have this alien creature who becomes the stand-in for Blackness, and Will Smith becomes the representation of basically the white status quo.
Yeah, it's and it's that's kind of there's a movie I remember seeing with James Caan that was similar. It was the same thing, that he had an alien, it was like alien mind, something like that. That his partner was an alien, and he was against him. He was opposed to him. Now, one thing you mentioned that really I didn't know this. When you talk about Spike Lee's movie Bamboozle,
yes,
and the fact that his wife, or Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, was in that movie, but Will Smith was offered the role to be the star of that. And talk about that, because when I thought about that and remembering the movie, I said, well, he would have been perfect playing with his wife, but he didn't want. Well, say why he didn't want to do that.
Well, again, in my researches, I found this story about how he and Jada were in bed and they were reading scripts, and they had Bamboozle, and then they had the Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh.
And that night they decided, Will Smith decided that he wasn't going to do Bamboozle, and he chose Bagger Vance, and Jada decided to do Bamboozle. And Spike Lee has sort of never forgiven Will Smith for making that decision.
Yeah, talk a little bit. Yeah, because that taking Bagger Vance over that movie is like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm not too kind to Bagger Vance, because
and you should. I'm glad the way you wrote it in the book. I'm glad you weren't. This movie. I threw it. I got it at a yard sale for like $0.25. The DVD many years ago. I got halfway through it and I threw it in the trash. Oh my God! For some of my listeners that may not know that movie, because that's one that when I mentioned it to a lot of people, usually they had never heard of it. And I'm glad they haven't, really. But talk about that movie.
Well, it's in this one part of the book that it's about the magical Negro figure.
Yeah.
Where in that movie, Matt Damon plays a golf champion who's lost his game. And all of a sudden, Will Smith, as Bagger Vance, appears out of a cornfield. And he takes Matt Damon under his wing and teaches him, how to regain his golf skills, as well as his abilities, his romantic, charm, and so forth.
Right.
And it's just the epitome of the magical Negro trope, and there are academic studies that have been done on this film where they sort of analyze all of the different moments that really exemplify the magical Negro. And this film is probably the most magical, the most I don't know. It's the epitome, ultimate magical Negro film. And then you just wonder what he was thinking when he. Even at the end of the movie, he does this dance, like Step and Fetch It.
Yeah,
it's just, and you wonder why he did it. And the answer he gives is that he wanted the opportunity to work with Robert Redford. And like for me, I have to be critical in the book. It was almost as if, in making that decision, he was sort of manipulating the process of most of his movies, where his character in the end has to reinforce the white power structure.
Right.
So in deciding to make this film, in order to work with Redford, whose vision this movie was, he was basically doing in this particular film what he's done in so many other films.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that movie, and listeners, do not, if you want to, check the movie out. It's on YouTube somewhere. You can check it out if you can deal with it for at least 5 minutes, and you'll understand what Dr. Tolliver is talking about, because this is very bad. But one thing, one thing about Will Smith, and I have, accept his role, and you talk about it in one of the chapters about him and women, the actresses that are with him in some of these movies.
Oh, yes.
Talk about that in particular. I think the first, they give him a woman in Independence Day, which is Vivica Fox.
Yes.
But she's a stripper, which is, I'm not, I know some people are going to say, why are you messing with strippers? But the fact is, this is a, Air Force guy who's got all of this degrees and everything, but he's married to a stripper. It's just weird. And after that movie, up until later on, and you mentioned this in the book, that every actress that's with him is again another racially ambiguous woman.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, I mean, this goes back to this whole sort of perception within the film industry, that if you have like a Black actor who is paired with a Black woman, it's a Black movie, and therefore it's not going to make any money. So the compromise, and you see this not only with Will Smith, but with Wesley Snipes and with Denzel Washington, that they're paired with women who are ethnic, quote unquote, in some kind of way, or they're biracial, as a way to deflect from this kind of fear of Black male sexuality.
Right.
That, and I guess it's also a way of avoiding casting a white woman, next to a Black actor. The other thing, though, that's sort of interesting is the way that these women are actually portrayed in the films. I mean, I talk about this whole phenomenon of the disappearing Black woman, that even when the Black women are in his films, they sort of die within the first 5 or 10 minutes. They're not, in the film for the duration of the film as a real presence. And Black women critics have been very upset, about that. But then again, it's having a powerful Black male at the center of a film, but you cannot, for some reason, there's a reluctance to give him like a full, like personal life, a sexuality, because that is too threatening. You said something earlier about Will Smith being safe. And this is certainly true. In order for a Black man to be a major star, he really has to be safe, for consumption by mainstream audiences. And one of the things that is a threat is this whole threat or this fantasy that society has about Black men and their sexuality.
Right. So even and with the Black women he's had in some of his movies, and when you just sit and reading the book, as far as they do disappear, Vivica Fox she doesn't die, and I don't think she dies in Independence Day, but her role is just a disappearing one. It just kind of fades away. enemy of the state, Regina King.
Mm-hmm.
Her role is like very minor. They're married to each other, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
really. And the whole thing in that movie is that with her is that he wants her to wear some lingerie.
Yes.
It's like, and when she finally does, he is so like wrapped up in what's going on, he doesn't even realize that she's got it on. I mean, he's not even into it then. So it's like what is going on here with this? But he yeah, finally, they put him in with all these, these actresses, and he doesn't, it's like, he's like accepted that role. He's accepted that. Now, one thing, what struck me, there's a picture in your book of, I had never seen, of W.B. Du Bois, the great historian, sociologist. And
Yes.
you have the same picture of Will Smith, and they're basically in the same outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about that. It's you call them the dandies.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's in the chapter about fashion.
Right.
That Will Smith, one of the other dimensions of his stardom is the kind of one of the ways that his stardom has been created is through fashion. And actually, for someone who has a kind of reputation, at least on screen, of sort of lessening, um, race, out off the screen, it's sort of opposite. The way that he dresses, like on the red carpet, and in other sort of off-screen events and so forth, is very Black.
Right.
And I just make this point that this kind of styling that he does is is a part of culture, and it's a part of history. And I was just, when I saw him with that plaid suit at that premiere, that picture of Du Bois, popped up in my mind. And I wanted to juxtapose them and to show that, even though he's a movie star, at some level, he is still doing a certain amount of cultural work. Even though I'm critical, of certain elements, of his films and so forth. But on the other hand, I mean, he does do, as I say, serious cultural work that is in the same sort of vein, perhaps, as someone like W.E.B. Du Bois, even if it's only to sort of liberate, like the Black man, or to
Right.
celebrate that of embrace of fashion and style that Black men have, as opposed to like white men. I mean, Black men have always been a lot more invested in the way that they dress and so forth, as an expression, of their identities. And he partakes of that as well.
Right. Definitely. Now, there's one thing before we conclude this. It's obviously not in your book, but the new movie he has out, King Richard.
Yes.
It's have you seen that yet?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want you to comment on, comparing it to what you have said in the book, what you see in that, because I've seen the movie also.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely a pro-Black stance in that one.
Well, yes. I mean, this film is a sort of a manifestation of the kind of change that he's undergone. I mean, he, like all of us, have undergone a kind of middle-age crisis. And he reached a point where he realized that if he didn't want to be known as someone who had just been famous for being successful, that he has had opportunities to make larger statements that he never really took advantage of. And so it was almost like he was at a cross roads, where he wanted to make his work a little bit more significant. And I see King Richard as an example of that. I mean, for instance, I have this one chapter that's devoted to an analysis of his actual acting in films.